Hi
Hi
guys.
guys.
Hello.
So did everybody get a chance to do the survey?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe what were some things that you thought were great from the survey? What were things that you agreed with?
Well, I think it did a good job on measuring, well, maybe not measuring, but evaluating probably the goals and objectives of the AIG program from UNCW. Like, did we get the skills that we need to be an effective AIG teacher? So I think it did a good job of measuring, did we feel that we gained the knowledge to become a better AIG teacher? So I think it did a good job with that. But not knowing what the goals and objectives are of the UNCW program, I'm assuming that student feedback is part of the process.
I thought it was good in that it took into account our evaluation of it and how we thought it helped our teaching. And so it was, the survey can then be used to improve the course for next year. And so not only did it address the goals, but it addressed improvements too.
I thought it was, I like how Josephine said gained knowledge, because it asked if you had learned more than when you first started. And I thought it was kind of a good way of showing maybe the importance of having trained and educated teachers teach the gifted, because it was kind of like something that we were saying really needs to be pushed. Something we really wanted to advocate for was kind of getting trained teachers. So I thought that was kind of a good part of it, to really show that it is needed.
I agree with all of you, and I also thought that it helped to measure the outcomes and the impacts, and how to improve the impact.
And adding on to what Kristen was saying, this with needing gifted education, this survey is the data that is collected can easily be shared with our state, who wants to make it so that you only have to take the praxis, and showing how valuable gifted education is for teachers.
I agree with
to
that.
be trained in it, yes. It could be used as data to back up why being trained in gifted education is necessary.
Right.
I remember I don't remember if it was, I think it was on that survey, it was asking what were some things that you learned or took away from it. And I just put basically that I had never heard about the compactors. I knew about differentiation, but I felt like the compacting was huge. The project-based learning was a big takeaway for me, letting the kids come up with their own questions and investigation. So I put some of those things down because those were huge things that I really liked the ideas. And I kind of just wished that there were more ideas to share. I know that's kind of the biggest thing. We've shared things that are at schools, but I was kind of hoping that some of the books would have examples of those and give more ideas.
I think it's a lot easier for us as teachers to see something and before we implement it and see kind of an exemplar of how it should be done. And then it's easier for us to effectively use it in our classrooms with our students.
Well, I did like that the survey allowed us to give our own feedback, which is important when you're trying to improve a program.
So I guess that kind of brings us to maybe what some of the things she wanted, but she was asking does this survey work to prove and improve, or how does it work to prove or improve? And you may have just stated that part. And actually, you know what, I think you did earlier, where you said it allows her to change the class and make it better, or figure out like what they figured out really well.
What's working and not working.
Correct.
Right.
And I don't know for certain, but I would say like she probably, or maybe more than one person maybe looks at that and actually kind of develops it, because even she stated it that, she might use the same shell, but based off of her clientele, based off the people in the class, she has to modify it to meet our instructional needs. Like, what do we already know, so she knows where to pick up.
Right. And did we take a survey for this course in the middle of the year, or am I just,
I don't remember.
I don't know.
I know we took a survey, but I feel like we took it at the end of the class. I don't feel like it was evaluating the AIG program at UNC. I guess it would have been beneficial for me had you given me a survey about AIG programming at the very beginning of the class, and then had me take the same one at the end of the class to see how they lined up. Like, to see if I went from like, I really don't know about the social emotional to, oh yeah, I learned a whole bunch. I guess like that would have been nice. Like if I had taken it and then all of a sudden I take it again and then they're both released and I can compare the two to see how much I had learned. But I don't.
Yeah, I can honestly say I would not be proficient in the beginning as I feel like I am right now.
Right.
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I think I got a good grasp of what's involved in meeting their needs.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know, I feel like it's a good thing for her to be able to measure. And as you said, I feel like it does show the effectiveness of the program. And as Rachel said, like the importance of why teachers need to be trained and educated and not just take a test and be considered a gifted teacher, an effective one. Okay.
So do we want to talk more about our AIG programs at our school and how they're evaluated?
I feel like I honestly don't know enough about it. And I know, like, looking at the district's plan, I know what they say we do, but I can't 100% say that I have been given a survey to fill out about the program.
Neither have I.
Right. And I talked to one of the TD teachers at my school, and she said that she did get a survey a couple weeks ago, but if we're considered stakeholders, then, the rest of the teachers should have been given the survey as well. To evaluate the program.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess we need to like investigate exactly what the procedure is in evaluating our programs. I can honestly say that I don't know that information.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know, as Rachel just said, that it went out to, like her magnet teachers and TD teachers, but did parents get it too?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, yeah, definitely our TD teachers, but I'm not sure what other stakeholders were given the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were to like make a survey or make some sort of evaluation, what things do you think would be like relevant to ask? Because we don't really know what's on ours. I mean, like, what would you, because I guess each school is different, but what do you think would be something important to rate on there or evaluate?
Well, I guess like I'm kind of looking at like a survey is just one part of an effective evaluation plan. So I guess, you'd have to figure out what exactly are you trying to measure? Like, what is its goal and objectives? Because you can't really base an evaluation on just one survey.
Yeah, I think we pulled that from the book, so I think it's good. And I know like the book stated like you can evaluate certain things like the contracts because they've got dated things on there and you can evaluate that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
I guess something I would be curious about would be like the social emotional, because I know like maybe it was at our last conversation we were saying that we didn't think there was enough attention given to it.
Mm-hmm. And I think we, and on the like CMS AIG plan, it talked about a lot of the academics and those data points. But yeah, like you said, and it talked about observational data, but what exactly is included in that observational data? So does that include the social and emotional needs, or is it only including their academic needs?
And I feel like to evaluate the social emotional, it kind of has to be like an observation, like a checkpoint. And that's where I was wondering if, I'm trying to figure out where it was now. I was wondering if kind of the one in one of the books now.
The checklist?
Yes, like there's an example of a structured observation form in the RIMS book on page 385. I was wondering if they would have something kind of like that would evaluate like the social emotional, or if like our schools could kind of create one, because otherwise it's hard to kind of evaluate that. But I feel like it would have to really have a lot of different points on there to even be relevant. And you have to also get the students' feedback to be relevant because it's about them. So I feel like you want to kind of compare what the teacher is observing, like, or I guess like what I'm observing as well as what the student is feeling and as well as what that TD teacher is feeling. So maybe it's completed by like 3 people to kind of compare and get a good measure.
Well, I agree with that. I was going to say that. I was going to say that it would be really important that all of the stakeholders are involved in this. Like Rachel was saying at her school that only the magnet teachers or the TD teachers got to participate in the survey, but it would be good for all teachers and all stakeholders to be involved in the survey so that it could really be improved upon.
Mm-hmm. And going back to what Josephine was saying earlier, like the goals and objectives need to be clearly, defined and laid out for everyone and for all the stakeholders, for people to really evaluate it correctly and accurately.
From what I'm hearing from all of us is like, I think it needs to be like a comprehensive evaluation plan.
Yeah.
It has to incorporate, it has to be multifaceted. It has to, incorporate things in different areas like social and emotional needs. And is it measuring, is the student's performance, teacher training, things like that. So I guess you want to develop a plan to like survey all the stakeholders on at least biannually. And then, when you get all that data, you want to, analyze it and really see if the plan is working or not, and what improvements need to be made.
And kind of going on that, like we keep talking about all the stakeholders, like I feel like the parents need to be involved with it as well as the students, like even at the younger grades, getting the students' feedback. And sometimes I feel like it's easy to kind of evaluate the academics because you can look at different scores on things. But in addition to just looking at scores, like looking at the creativity into how they're presenting things and looking at some of their projects that they've done and I guess some of the contracts, like some of those would bring in the creativity and, I guess like the accountability of the students.
Right.
I still worry about getting like the whole piece. And I know we keep saying it's got to be multifaceted. Like I feel like it's difficult because my go-to would be like a survey to figure out and kind of see things. And you have to figure out other ways of also getting the information.
Right. I think, it was in the book somewhere that it was saying that the evaluation can't just come from survey data.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like you said, it's difficult to try and figure out the best way to evaluate it in another way.
Well, I guess that's where the book also talked about, you know, having an advisory committee
Right.
to come up with the evaluation plan.
Mhm.
And that's where all of these things that we're mentioning would, come into play.
Right.
So
And, like,
that way, all the stakeholders have to have a say in coming up with the evaluation plan as well.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, if all the stakeholders are involved in the evaluation process, then it's, we'll get a better result and more
Yeah,
information.
because the book says to have a high quality evaluation program evaluation, things like that would need to happen.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a lot that goes into it.
Mm-hmm. With multiple.
Yeah, I'm sure at our district level, we have no idea what goes on in their daily lives. I'm sure that's what they're all doing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Not just, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So if we were to kind of make a survey like she made, I feel like some of the questions might kind of be the same, because you could ask, something along the lines of, has your child progressed in math this year? Meaning, has he or she picked up new skills? Not just is my child brilliant and already knew it, but have they learned something new? And then giving examples of new things that their child has demonstrated. But I feel like in addition to that, there are some things that we might just add based off of our school.
Yeah, I think the survey that Dr. Housen gave us would be something that we could use for the gifted students as like a data point, and get their input.
Because a lot of it is kind of like, if you've learned more in this regard, after this training, where do you stand here? I don't remember what each question was per se, but I do know that it was kind of like, did you know more about the social emotional? Do you feel that you are better able to meet the needs? Do you feel like you have a better understanding of differentiation? Like, part of those could be kind of reworded to meet their needs and to figure out what the kids know.
Yeah.
I feel like in addition to that, like, if I were to give one at my school, I would want to make sure that, like, we're identifying kids regardless of, like, their ethnicity, regardless of the financial standpoints, and making sure that they're all kind of getting the same equity. Like, I feel like that should be a question that would be like on one of my surveys. And that would probably be more geared towards parents and teachers. Like, do you feel like we are identifying everybody regardless of, income and ethnicity and language spoken?
Yeah, and I guess it would all go towards, like, what are you trying to measure? Like, what data do you want to gain from this? So you would gear your survey towards asking those types of questions of what you want feedback on, maybe.
Yeah.
Feedback on what's working, what's not working.
And then, like, another one, like, because just talking about the survey that Rachel just said went out, like, I feel like another question should be, do you feel that teachers are supported in this program? Do you feel that teachers are getting the training necessary to meet their students' needs? Do you feel that ongoing training would be beneficial at our school? I feel like some of those things would be good towards parents to get their input on what they think is going on, and teachers to see what they feel. I feel like those would be two really pertinent things that would be, that I think would work really well for my school.
Yeah, I think I would really start with student feedback first. Okay. Just their thoughts on, are they being challenged enough? Things like that. Are you being, are you given opportunities to pursue something of interest? And those types of questions would actually improve our AIG program. Like, are the students motivated? Are they engaged? Are they learning? So those were the types of things that I would want to know more about and get it from the student's perspective, as well as parents as well, because parents know their kids the best, and students are at this age, they're pretty honest about their learning in school and what they enjoy about it, what they don't enjoy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Are they being challenged? What do they want to know more about? Stuff like that.
I feel like right now they, and maybe this changes as they get up, but I feel like in kindergarten and first, they feel like they kind of know it all and they don't feel like they really have any weaknesses. So it would be interesting to kind of see what they view as something they're really good at and what they view as like something they learn through the program, so that way they can say something new that they've learned rather than I know everything.
Right.
I think it's also important that we evaluate the components of the local AIG plan to ensure funding is appropriately allocated. Also, in developing strategic processes for data analysis for the district level results, as well as the school level results regarding gifted students. So I think those are also things that we need to look at as well when we're looking at changes for the survey or things to add to the survey.
And maybe this is kind of silly, but why do different schools have a different population of gifted students? Like, why is it that my school would pretty much have 50% of fifth graders in the program, but another school might only have 3? Like, I feel like some of that information just makes me wonder, like, is my school just overly accepting? Or are these parents, really motivating their students and moving them? Or is it based off of experiences? Is it based off of preschool? Is it based, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, why is it that schools have different numbers? Not even looking at ethnicities of them in the program, just looking at sheer numbers. Like, why is it that some schools have a very slim population and some have more? Because I just feel like my numbers are astronomical. Like 50% is huge.
Right.
We're
at my school has it. And then at my school, it's very, very different. And we have a very small percentage of students who are gifted.
Well, it makes you think if it's the identification procedures.
Yeah. And like going back to what Kristen was saying is, the equity of it, and our school makeup should, you know what I'm trying to say, but our school makeup should be matching our gifted program as well.
Right. So your population should match
the
same percentage in the gifted program.
Correct. And I think we talked about that with our very first class that we took. Talking about like the population. So I remember that. I'm just wondering, like, and I know like you're going to have different populations and there's going to be different economic things, but I just wonder, how, I don't know, I guess I just, I feel like that's one of the things, like, I want to make sure everybody is open to the program and that we're identifying kids. But it makes me wonder, as Josephine said, like, is my school overly identifying? Are we very lenient, where Rachel's school maybe has different standards and they're a little bit less lenient? Like, just, are mine just high achievers, but hers are just extremely gifted?
Right. I don't know. Well, I guess, another thing that if we were creating a survey, we want to include is rubrics to support teachers and to support the monitoring of the program and the standards and the expectations. So I guess that would be falling under, designing the data collection, and if there was something to go off of, and a rubric to kind of guide people towards their evaluation, then that would also help with the evaluation of the program. And then also like a communication tool that, outlines the programs and the plan expectations at our school level. So, that would be part of preparing the evaluation, is making sure that everyone is aware of what the expectations are. And then if you know what the expectations are, then you can evaluate it. If you don't have any expectations, or what you want the outcomes to be, then there's really no way for you to effectively evaluate it.
So once it's evaluated, I guess there has to be, the most important part would be looking at it and then making changes to the program. And as Josephine said, you got to have students at the heart of it, so that way you can figure out how to meet their needs. And I feel like maybe Letitia said this in one of our old ones, but were you the one that was saying that you kind of had to really work to kind of advocate for a student's needs who needed like 6th grade information at one point?
I don't think so.
Okay. I remember somebody stating something about like advocating for like trying to get like 6th grade materials for like somebody who was like working at that level.
Yeah, that was like on our WebEx.
Okay, well, I remember somebody like saying that. So like if you're looking at the information, you want to, like if you're looking at all the rubrics and observational notes and contracts and whatnot, you want to make sure like after you look at all that, that we can basically figure out, okay, well, this is what we have and this is what we need to do with our funds. Like we need to make sure that we can get somebody who is qualified to teach some of this 6th grade information to this 3rd grade student who's ready at that level. I feel like we have to be willing to look at it and not just say, okay, well, I gave it, but we need to be willing to take the feedback and go from there. And sometimes that's the hardest part, because you're like, no, I can't make those changes.
Also, like I remember reading in the book that designing the evaluation plan, incorporating the NAGC pre-K through grade 12 gifted programming standards, like using that as a stepping stone to develop a plan and to see where you're doing good and where where a program might not be doing good. So using those as a guide to help construct or design an evaluation plan would also be helpful. So that way you would have you would get formative and summative information on how well the program is working based on those standards, perhaps.
That what you just said kind of made me think. I was thinking about how my school does different meetings to basically talk to the parents about, this TD program and identifying students and how the testing procedures work and how the portfolio works. Like, I feel like they do a really great job of having parent meetings to inform them. And then they also put it like on the website to keep everybody in the loop. And so I feel like if they were going to do a survey, one of the questions would be like, do you feel informed about the process? Do you feel like you understand the identification process? Were parents part of like the portfolio process, so they can know like how their students are progressing, how their children are progressing with it, not necessarily seeing what they did, but how they're progressing? I feel like my school would definitely put those in there, because you want to have kind of a section where you're going to score really high. But then I feel like if it were questions about like, I feel like having, the trained teachers and having lots of people involved in the program, I feel like that would be lower, because we have so many people in the AIG program that they don't necessarily feel that they're always getting the services because their kids aren't being pulled out. And that's why like the teachers have to go ahead and kind of say, no, they are. Remember, we want them to be TD 24/7. So this is what's happening in the classroom to meet their needs.
so do we need to talk about like other additional information we might need to collect?
For like our program, is that what you mean? To evaluate it?
Yeah. I think we did a good job. I think we talked about, the survey that Dr. Housen gave us, and we talked about how what it addressed, but I think we also talk about like what wasn't addressed?
I don't
like
know.
what we need, what the survey could do a better job at measuring, or
I don't know if we did that.
I don't remember either.
Okay. All right.
Well, I know that there were a lot of questions that kind of asked, like if my learning had advanced, and I became much more advanced at things, and I learned more about things. I learned how important the social emotional piece was that I hadn't really considered prior. And then I remember just the one thing that I kind of wanted more of is I wanted to be able to see more examples like in the textbooks, and that's just because I'm a visual person. But I feel like even in the survey, she asked what you would want more of, and I think that's just more examples. But I guess maybe in the long scheme of things, in the grand scheme, I feel like anybody who wants to teach TD, they should get the training and take the classes to be, more equipped and better able to do so. Because if I would have just not taken the classes, I wouldn't have known any of that stuff. I would have just kind of relied on differentiation and what my mentor would hand me.
Right.
And I'd be curious to see if there is a difference between, now that we've gotten some training in this, is it going to make a difference in our classrooms next year?
Mm-hmm.
That would be great data to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you could compare the data from your classroom this year to your classroom next year, and how would we compare that data? Would we look at, because if we want to compare their like social and emotional needs as well as academic, then is a survey the best thing to do? Or I know we need to have multiple evaluations, so what other piece would we use to compare?
I feel like I would need like a rubric and a checklist, that sort of thing. But in kindergarten, I feel like I could take a 2-minute video of students and learn a lot. Because just taking a 2-minute video of them working at their tables, you can learn so much. Because I remember like intervening with one little boy early on, he was 4 and didn't really know how to ask questions and take turns, and we were having issues. And it just needed some instruction to kind of help him get used to it. So I feel like I could get a lot just from that as well. But I know it'll definitely make a change next year. I kind of wish that we had part of this class in the summer to start the year off using some of those things.
Right, that's very true.
But I think it'll be definitely 100% better next year.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you also, Kristen, with working with very small kids, that observation is very key. And evaluation is very critical for any student, especially with the gifted education population. So the amount of data that we're able to collect on these students really does help to facilitate their learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, the observational data, because like test scores are not always the only valid and reliable source in measuring of how we're meeting their needs and their goals and everything. And so having that observational data through a rubric or a checklist or a video would give us a lot more information.
And I remember the book stating, I don't know which book it was now, but it pretty much said like standardized tests were, a great way of assessing gifted students. And it was saying no, because they could be off the charts from the get-go. So how are you going to kind of measure that? So I thought that was interesting, because we have to think of other ways to really show that they've learned something. And that's why I think their projects are a great way to see their learning.
Yeah, it says it here. Traditional indicators of success in educational programs, such as standardized achievement tests, are not likely to be valid or reliable in measuring the goals and objectives of gifted programs. So you can't use standardized testing.
Can't rely on it.
Nope. Going back to that saying, you know, what happens if they're, you know, a bad testing day? They're not showing their true gifts on a test.
Right. And you know, back to like what we heard at the conference, you know, some tests don't test what their talents are, like you just said. You know.
And a test is just a snapshot. It's a one-shot deal. You're not getting the true picture of the child.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess we have less than 1 minute.
Yeah.
So I think we did a great job and learned